Hi, welcome to My Comic Crush. I'm Vicky Sebring, and I love comics. So let's dive into a long box and see what we find. With me this week is my co-host, Scott Sebring.
Hey there.
And this week we are going to be talking about the initial run of Neil Adams on the X-Men way back, Volume 1, number 56 through 59. We're talking way back, people.
Some of my all-time favorite comics ever.
This is really awesome stuff. And not only is this Neil's first time on the X-Men, this is his first time with Marvel. And at this point, he's actually, it's really cool because he's kind of keeping a foot in both worlds because he was working at DC. And before that, he worked a lot of other places, but he was at that point at DC. And then he kind of comes over to Marvel and he's like, but I'm still going to keep a foot at DC. He's like, he's trying to open the door and make it possible to do at both at once. DC's not terribly happy about it, but they're still going to go with it because they want Neil. Who wouldn't want Neil? I want Neil. Don't you want Neil? Everybody wants Neil.
So we should probably do a little bit of a primer here for folks who might have no idea.
Are you living under a rock, people?
Yeah, no, I was about to say.
Are you under a rock? Let's push that rock over and let the light into your lives. It's time to come out in the sun, children. Come out in the sun.
I mean, okay, there's a lot of artists that have come and gone. There's a lot of writers that have come and gone in comics. But it's almost talking about, like, we're going to talk about rock and roll. And you don't know who the Beatles or the Rolling Stones or Elvis is. And Neil is in that category in the world of comics, in my eyes, and in many, 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 many people's eyes.
So you're saying Neil Adams is comic book Elvis?
I mean, okay, I was talking rock and roll, but it's like even in the art world, like, who your Da Vinci's are and your Rembrandts and Michelangelo and so forth, and your Van Goghs and Picassos, and I could keep going on and on and on. But Neil is one of the all-time greats. He is really in that top echelon of comic book artist legends. He's pretty awesome. And
I like him.
And he's inspired a lot of people to pick up a pencil a long time ago to try to draw comics and superheroes and draw them in reading these characters because they just look so awesome. Me being one of them. I want to be a Neil Adams wannabe.
There are worse things to want to be, that is for sure. And he's definitely one of the big names and the real pioneers in the photorealistic school of art in superhero comics.
He pushed the boundaries as well of like panel layout. He was always experimenting early on with like some of his runs with like Dead Man and those where he was really not just like, here's a block, here's a block, here's a block, here's a block. He would have angles. He would have things drawn in the shape of faces and so forth. It's just amazing.
There's some really nice panel work in these issues. I remember there's one particular sequence where the panel work is almost like a fan splayed out across the page in angles and stuff. It really beautifully done. Really nice, really dynamic. There's a reason he is held in such high regard. He's good, people.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we could even start with the cover of number 56, which was the Living Monolith.
And this is an iconic cover. It has been paid homage to so many times. You've seen it in the Dark Phoenix saga. You've seen it time and time and time again. You've got this iconic, towering figure with arms raised over their heads, and their hands are gripping the title of the book between them like they're going to crush it. And then down at their feet, you have all the little ants who are the rest of the people in the comic, and it's just powerful. It's just wham, people, wham!
That image has become its own trope of sorts.
It has, but it's because it's so powerful, and it's such a dynamic punch when you see it. And even if you've never seen it before and you don't know where it comes from, it still hits you boom right in the gut, which is why it keeps being done right over and over and over and over again.
Just like anything that's an iconic image, whether it's that I Want You Uncle Sam poster or the Beatles Sgt. Pepper cover, people keep revisiting it and they do a take on it and they do a spoof on it or they do an homage to it. And there's so many different covers out there that these sort of things have happened to. For example, Days of Future Past, X-Men
141, 142, totally. It's
I saw that like a Teen Titans cover done in that fashion.
It's because you get these powerful images, and especially if you're someone who's grown up in comics, who's been here and reading for a while, especially if you're someone who started reading and then moved into the industry, these images are always going to be in the back of your head, and they're going to pop out. You're going to pay homage to them, and the fans love it. Even if the fans aren't familiar with the image, it's still a strong image. That's why they redo it. That's why they use it again. So it just keeps gaining momentum and lives over and over again as more and more people are exposed to it in the new forms. But it's wonderful when they get the chance to go back and see where it all begins. And this is where it all begins for this particular image, this particular iconic cover that just gets done again and again and again. It's fabulous. Fabulous. Look at it, people. It's on the website. Look at it. Look at it. Look at it. Ooh.
And although I'm gushing like crazy over Neil Adams' work,
here? No.
whether it's on this one or on other podcasts, I'll probably gush on as well as we go along. The other thing that really makes this series of comics really awesome is that it is an incredible team behind these comics. Not just Neil, though he's a major part in it, but I mean, let's hear the roll call. Who was working on these issues?
Well, for all this run, for the writer, you've got Roy Thomas.
Yay.
Whoa, yeah.
Yay. In the writer's world, he's up there.
He's up there, baby. And then, of course, you've got Neil Adams doing the artwork. You've got Tom Palmer doing the inking.
One of my all-time favorite inkers ever, 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 ever. I love it.
Give him the love, people. Give him the love. You've got a couple of different, a few different letterers that are working through these different issues here. You start out with Herb Cooper. You go to Sam Rosen. You go to Artie Simek. You know me, I can't say names right. I'm sorry, Artie. I'm so sorry. Forgive me. And then,
is it letterers that you have problems with these?
Maybe it is. I have a letterer's block, I guess. But anyways, and then you...
Because Tom Zeskowitz
it's my kryptonite, man. I feel so bad. I really do.
You love letterers.
I love them. They do some of my favorite things. They give me words on pages. That's like my holy grail. Anyways, and then you wind up with Sam Rosen, does the last issue, number 59 as well. He comes back around. Editor-in-chief is Stan Lee.
So, like I said, this is a powerhouse.
This is a powerhouse early days. And not only that, but at this point, the X-Men were really on the verge of cancellation.
For the first time.
This is the run that sort of revamped and revitalized them and bought them a new lease on life for a little bit. So this is good stuff. This is good stuff. And you start off in this set of issues that we're talking about, you get the Living Monolith. And not only do you get the Living Monolith, but you get Alex Summers, who we've only just been introduced in a few issues previous, and who's only just found out he's a mutant. And in this first issue, he hasn't even gotten a code name or an outfit or anything. He's just freaking out, dude. And he knows nothing about his powers, nothing about anything other than stuff blows up.
And he does become?
He eventually becomes Havoc. Ooh. And Havoc is with sort of he's never really quite a full-fledged X-Men. He never really quite becomes a full-fledged X-Men.
I thought he was in First Class.
Oh, don't go there, dude. Don't go there.
What? If it happens in the movies, certainly it must have...
The movies are not canon, okay? Can we be clear on this, people? The movies are not canon. The movies are like some sort of alternate what-if issue. I don't even want to go there. They're like some sort of weird, twisted, psychotic, bad mushroom dream.
It is pretty amazing that, not going to go fully into the film stuff here, but First Class has at least two characters in it that were not even X-Men.
No.
in the first class.
And that's the least of their sins.
Mystique?
Mystique was not an X-Men. She was certainly not a first-class X-Men, and she was never Charles Xavier's sister.
Havoc? I think he was a more peripheral.
He was like a part-timer, you know? He and Lorna
unless there was a string stuff that maybe came out in the later 90s or the 2000s that I missed, but for the longest time, he wasn't an X-Men. He certainly wasn't one of the first, and he was Scott's younger brother.
Technically, he was like a part-time X-Men. He and Lorna Polaris, who also was featured a little in this run, although at this point, she's not even his love interest. She's Bobby's love interest, Iceman. But eventually, they're sort of part-timer X-Men. They sort of come in, they come out, they come in, they come out. Eventually, though, they do wind up pretty much heading X-Factor later down the line. And eventually even further, like into the X-Factor run, stuff happens. Alex winds up in his own book, Mutant X, for a while before he winds up coming back. So he's got a lot that goes on. But as far as his association with the X-Men, he's always been kind of a part-timer.
And here we are in the early days of Alex.
In the early days of Alex. And in this issue, he's mostly running around pretty much in rags, half-clothed, which I'm okay with, But this is where you find out the relationship between him and the living monolith and why it's so important. They've got this almost sort of parasitical relationship in some ways. They both derive their powers from the same places. So while Alex is alive and soaking up cosmic rays, he prevents the living monolith from being the living monolith. Instead, he's just the living pharaoh, which is, he's still got some powers, but he's nowhere near as big and bad as the monolith is.
Living monolith light.
Yeah, well, it's like he calls himself the living pharaoh at that point. He's just pretty much a pompous butt. So you've got them. Like I said, you've got Lorna Dane pops up in the next issue. And also in the next issue, you get to start dealing with the Sentinels again.
At this point in the X-Men history, the Sentinels only appeared one time before this.
I know. This is their second appearance. And that, for someone like me, to whom the Sentinels, when I started reading the Sentinels, were like everywhere. It's like, oh, Sentinels, 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 Sentinels. It's like, for this to be so new and them to be so new, it's like, wow.
When the Sentinels were popping up like tea time.
Oh, man, you have Sentinels to the left of you, Sentinels to the right of you, Sentinels from the future, Sentinels from the past, Sentinels from space.
Which brings me to the point where when I was first exposed to this storyline, which is the Sentinel trilogy, which is the issues 57, 58, and 59, they had done somewhere around 1975 a like giant-sized summer special compilation of these 3 issues for like, giant-sized X-Men.
This was before trade paperbacks?
Exactly. I found this on the 7-Eleven rack, and this was my first exposure to this storyline. It was my first exposure to something like the Sentinels. And I was only about 10 years old, an aspiring, comic book wannabe artist type thing, and the artwork just blew me away. Now, I had seen Neil Adams' work with, like, the Green Lantern and the Green Arrow, the Justice League, a lot of DC titles and stuff. But at this age was the first time I was really starting to get the names and really associate the names with this stuff. But this was my first exposure to Sentinels. It was an awesome story. And there was a little ad at the end of the story saying, check out the X-Men, or rather, check out the all-new X-Men. I was like, there's new X-Men? And it had a cover on there. And I was like trying to figure out, well, where's Angel? Where's the Beast? Is that one the Beast? He's kind of blue. Ended up being Nightcrawler. It was kind of a primer of sorts of like, the new X-Men are out. Go check them out as well. And probably maybe not even 2 or 3 months later, hitting the stands was the new X-Men with Sentinels on the cover. Do you think that was a coincidence?
Are you saying you think this was a plot?
I think it was to get Sentinels back into people's brains, about almost a good 5 or 6 years later after this particular run, because they're going to reintroduce them again. And for me, this is where the new X-Men really started to take off. because you have the X-Men Sentinel saga, which goes right into the birth of the Phoenix, and the rest is just full-blown history.
So you're saying this was a calculated move on Marvel's part to suck you in and keep you hooked?
Maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah, whether that was intended or not, I think the timing was just brilliant, because they definitely hooked me.
They're good at hooking you, aren't they? When they want to be, they can sometimes get their hooks into you pretty good.
When it's done well, it's done incredibly well. And when it's done bad, it's no fun for anybody.
Now, I want to mention, at the end of issue 56 and 57, there are two little, add-on bonus little storyettes that are thrown in there that are not Neil Adams' artwork. They're done by a different team. And the first one is kind of like a background on Angel and how he comes to join the X-Men. It's like just this little story with him and Cyclops and Bobby and Professor X. And then the second one, in the end of issue 57, is called The Female of the Species. And it is written by a woman, Linda Fite. However, she's also, when they give her credit for writing the stories, she's referred to as being a member of the weaker species. This story is such a product of its time. OMG. It is such a product.
Quick little disclaimer. Scott is now backing away from the microphone for a moment and sitting back. Bust out the soapbox. Go for 3, 2, 1.
I am on my soapbox here. I get on this soapbox a lot. I recognize that this is a product of the time. This is just sort of the way things were back then, but I don't have to like it. But I mean, it's supposed to be like a little insight into origins of the Uncanny X-Men, and this is supposed to be about Marvel Girl. And she starts by how she uses her powers to make apple pie and help her with the housework and sweeping. And then, after that, she gets into how, but my powers are also good for deflection of attacks and escape and picking locks and levitation and, of course, the omnipresent psychic whammy. But what kills me is it ends with how she says, but then again, there's the normalcy of just being able to turn men's heads. Wow. Yeah. I'm so glad that our comics have evolved past this point. I know we still have a ways to go. I know there are still the whole women in refrigerators tropes and all that, but we've come a ways, and I'm proud of that fact. I'm happy of that fact. I'm so glad that I no longer see little featurettes of my superheroes using their superpowers to bake pies and do their housework. End of soapbox. I'll step down now, but I reserve the right to break it out in the future. Bitter pill there. Nope, gonna spit it out. Not drinking that Kool-Aid. Nope, not drinking that Kool-Aid. There's not enough sugar in the world to make me drink that Kool-Aid.
And you were jumping all over Sue Storm the other week.
Well, it's just the way it is. I get it. It's a product of the times. I take into account, when I read anything, I take into account when it was written, what was society like. And at that point in time, that was the norm for how you pictured women. But that's not who I want to be, and that's not the role model I want. It's not the role model I would have wanted back then, which is why when I first encountered Ms. Marvel, she had such a tremendous impact on me. But that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about Carol Danvers. We're talking about X-Men. So I couldn't let it pass without talking about it.
We're not even talking about this storyline.
I know, but I couldn't let it pass. I couldn't ignore it. I have to warn the readers. About this little bit of nastiness Kool-Aid in the back there that's just going to be like, what? If you're coming at it from a modern point of view, that's going to be like, what were they thinking? So just so you're aware, it's in there. You can skip it. You have my permission to skip it. But back to the story, okay? So you've got The living monolith, and then you go right from the living monolith into the Sentinels. Now, you're maybe wondering, how is it that the Sentinels got rebooted or reactivated, considering that the first batch that were created by Bolivar Trask way back in X-Men issues number 14 through 16 eventually rebelled against him and killed him?
Not if you ask his son.
Well, this is all where this comes from, because if you ask his son, Larry Trask, the X-Men were the ones who killed his father. They are evil, they are murderers, they need to be controlled, maybe destroyed in his more incoherent moments. And because of that, he has talked a federal judge, Judge Chambers, into creating the Federal Council on Mutant Activities, and they have financed and authorized the reactivation of these new Sentinels that Larry's created, and they're going after all the mutants. They have captured Polaris, Lorna Dane. They wind up in Egypt, where the X-Men are just finished dealing with the Monolith, and they capture Alex. They wound up capturing Iceman. They even captured the Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, Toad, Banshee. They've captured everybody. They're going full hog out, capturing mutants. This is obviously going to put them in conflict with the X-Men.
Or what's left of the X-Men.
What's left of the X-Men that they haven't captured. But this is also where Alex first gets his outfit. His uniform is actually provided to him by Larry Trask. His name, Havoc, is actually given to him by Larry Trask. And Alex willingly went along with him at the first. Why? Because Larry had Lorna. And Larry told Alex that if he cooperated, he'd leave Lorna alone. Of course, Larry was lying out his butt. But Alex didn't know that yet. But the suit that he gave Alex actually helped Alex control his powers. The circle on the front sort of shows him how much power he's utilizing, helps him direct it. What he didn't know is that Larry had also built kind of a shut-off switch into the suit so that he could turn Alex's power off. And when he activated it with this little gun thingy that he'd shoot at him, it would shield Alex from the cosmic rays and shut his power down. Of course, if you shield Alex from the cosmic rays and shut his powers down, what happens?
Elsewhere,
you'll get Monolith. Aha! So there are consequences here, but Larry's a kind of overconfident and a bit of a pompous butt, so he's not too worried about that. He thinks his Sentinels can deal with absolutely anything, and he thinks he has absolute 100% control of them. He's wrong, but...
So this is the basic premise across this trilogy of the Sentinel story. Son of the original inventor, believes that the X-Men have, killed his father. Years later, he brings the Sentinels back to fulfill his vengeance upon mutants everywhere, and especially the X-Men. And we get to see the classic X-Men such as Cyclops, Marvel Girl, and Beast, and Angel, and Iceman try to defeat this particular problem. But you also get this wide array and little exposures of these various other mutants. That was something that was really neat for me when I read that giant-sized issue, was that I was introduced just briefly to some names like the Blob, the Toad. I was familiar with Scarlet Witch, and it was almost like a roll call of some of these various mutants. So when they popped up later on in other stories, I'm like, oh, those were the people that were mentioned in the Sentinel saga. Just little things in the back of my head.
They even try to make you think they're dealing with Magneto.
Oh, for about 3 panels.
Also, you know what? I want to point out, because just hearkening back to what you were talking about, that giant-sized X-Men, when you were talking about seeing Nightcrawler who was blue and wondering if he was the Beast. You gotta remember, people, at this point in time, the Beast is not even blue yet. He's not furry. He's not blue. He just looks like an extremely kind of muscular dude. He can pass. He looks like you and me, just kind of beefy. He hasn't quite come into his secondary mutations yet.
Runs around barefoot a lot.
He does run around barefoot a lot because his toes are useful.
But his vocabulary is just as expansive as ever.
He's still the brains. He's the oldest X-Men, and he's still, the brainiest there. Although you do get some really nice examples of Cyclops' leadership skills here and his ability to think on the spot and stuff. Really nice, really good to see. In many ways, this is shades of the Frankenstein story, just as the original storyline with Trask's father was. You know, they're both men who have created these monsters that eventually get away from them and they can't control. And there are shades of this storyline through both Sentinel stories and in future ones as well. They're the thing that's meant to be a tool, but instead turns around and bites your hand off.
I really like the adventure elements within the story that just sing to me, because it's this classic period of comic books where relationships can be interesting, dynamics can be interesting, and you can have those in so many different issues or different episodes or whatever you want to call it, and in the character development. And there's just sometimes I just want a good, solid, challenging story, an adventure. And this one is, the pedal is to the metal. It literally is just like boom, 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 rock solid and engaging and surprising. There's some twists and turns, which we will not be telling here.
No, not going to tell you. Got to read it. Get out there and read it.
In rereading this for this podcast, as we normally do, even though this is a story that I was familiar with over 40 years ago, yeah, I'm old, I still found myself like at the edge of my seat of like, how are they going to get out of this? In the back of the head somewhere, like, I remember how they did, but I was still engaged. I was invested. I was sucked in.
There's not a lot of down snoozy time in this storyline. It's just go, 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 go. What's going on here? Oh, this is going on here. There's stuff happening all over the place. It will keep you going.
And the X-Men are so well defined without necessarily the drama, well defined in regards as far as their personalities, that you know the kind of person Scott Summers is. You got a pretty good idea the kind of person Marvel Girl is, and the Beast, and Warren the Angel, and Bobby the Iceman. You really do get kind of easily get a sense of their personalities.
Their personalities and also how they relate to each other. It's also worth mentioning that at this point in the comic, as far as they're aware, Professor X is dead. So he figures at no point in this storyline. There is no Professor X calling the shots. This is all them on their own, figuring it out, dealing with it, trying to keep the X dream alive and do what they think needs to be done. But at the same time, they are still very, very young. These are early days for the X-Men. They have been around not even 6 years at this point. So they are not fully realized and fleshed out and developed as to the characters. Don't get me wrong, they're still strong characters, but they have not gone through as much and become as much. They're still really young. They're still very young. These are important things to remember and important things to realize. You're seeing early days here, and it's awesome. Awesome sauce.
Like I said, I just really love the pacing of this one. And the run continues at this kind of pace. I mean, we go on for at least 4 more issues after the Sentinel saga, which like I said, we're not going to get into those issues with Neil Adams and Roy Thomas team going on with the X-Men. But these 4 issues are just so solid. They are so classic. The images explode off the page. The story is engaging and just like I said, it doesn't pull any punches, and it's good, clean fun. As if I haven't expounded enough gushing over Neil Adams. One of the things when I was looking at this more recently was how he was drawing Scott Summers.
I love how he draws Scott Summers. Let me be clear here. I love how he draws Scott Summers.
I remember Scott Summers when his nickname used to be Slim Summers. He didn't look steroided out, but he had musculature. He had, like that, as you would put it, like that swimmer's body kind of thing.
Swimmer's martial artist body. You know,
lean, mean, muscle machine, but not bulky, not looking like a beach bodybuilder.
Yeah, he doesn't look like he pumps iron. He just looks like somebody who's super fit, lean, and athletic, and totally capable. And that's while it's not the artist that I was first exposed to with Scott Summers. It is very much the silhouette of Scott Summers that I expect. And I just love to see him drawn that way.
Oh, yeah. And I don't think he's been drawn that way for at least over 20 years.
Well, aesthetics change, and I understand that. A lot of aesthetics in the comic world have moved away from my preferred aesthetic. That doesn't mean it's bad or wrong. It's just different.
But his illustrations of all the X-Men and Marvel Girl, I just felt that they were each unique. That Warren, you could tell this person should have been a movie star. His body language even had that kind of posture of somebody with confidence and stature.
His use of the body and the body language and the positioning is very evocative. Adds to the story. It adds to the dynamics and the emotional impact. It adds to the dialogue and the flow of the plot. Love it. Gotta love it.
I've seen so many artists where the expression is all in the eyes and in the mouth. And here, it could be the tilt of a neck. It could be the tilt of a shoulder to the tilt of the neck, and a slump or an arch, or everything seems to try to point in the direction of what that character is trying to express.
That's why he's one of the masters.
Now, I've expressed why I liked this particular run of the X-Men and so forth, and that's why I suggested to you to, give it a look-see, check it out, because I think you dig it. I'm very curious, what were some of your highlights about this run?
One of the things I really enjoyed about reading this is because I've heard and I say heard in little quotation marks, so much about this. Because whenever the X-Men or the New Mutants or whatever would encounter Sentinels in any of the issues that I was collecting and reading back in the day, it all gets harkened back to this storyline, more so even than the original storyline. It's Larry Trask that I heard more about. And for me, it's like, great, it's like, here are the gaps. And now I understand what they're talking about. Now I understand what was alluded to here. And I love that. But also I love the art, because this is what I think the X-Men should look like. Maybe it's not my lineup of X-Men, but this is what I think the X-Men should look like, by and large. But also, you got to see so many other things going on. You got to see, like you said, that roll call of mutants. You got to see little glimpses of other mutants. And you got to see, this is really kind of in media at large, it seems like, where the mutant menace really came to the forefront of the political and social consciousness. The Sentinels and everything were getting broadcast on TV. And they're capturing mutants, and it's being broadcast, and you're seeing, but you're also starting to see some of that backlash where people are like, wait a second, are we going too far? Where's these people's due process? What, is this really how we want to deal with this? Is this really constitutional? Is this right? You're starting to see that debate, but you do hear the term mutant menace. So it's always nice to see where the roots are, the seeds were planted, what harken back to where it began. I love that sort of thing. That's why I'm a collector of back issues, because I love the back issues. I want to know what they're talking about, what those little asterisks mean, where it all came from. So I really love that. It's a good story. It's fast-paced. It gives me an insight into a lot of the development of a lot of the relationships that I know later on when they're more fully formed. And some of the dynamics and the tensions you sort of start to see the beginnings of here. So for me, this is like candy, It's like, sugar! Hype me up! Give me some caffeine too! Woo! I'm on a buzz. Awesome sauce. So love it. I really hope you'll check it out. It's out there in so many forms. Because this is classic stuff. You can get it in hardcover trade paperbacks. You can get it in paperback trade paperbacks. There's so many ways you can get it. It's well worth checking out. I think you'll really, really, really enjoy it. I know I did. And I know, of course, you love it.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to wrap it up here. Once again, we're talking X-Men Volume 1, issues number 56 through 59. If you want to go seek them out, do so. You'll enjoy it, really. It's really good stuff. Now, I want to take this moment, I want to give a special shout out to our very good friend and podcast listener, Larry Stroth. Thank you so much for all the feedback. Really appreciate it. And also, I want to give a shout out to all our friends who host the Monster Party podcast with Larry: Matt Weinhold, Sean Sheridan, James Gonis. Love you guys. If you're into monsters and monster movies, check them out. Also, we'd still love to hear from you guys out there. If you've got any sort of feedback at all, we'd love to hear from you. You can, send us an email through the website or through our Facebook page. Come and find us. Hey, we tweet too. Woo! So until next time, I'm Vicky Sebring.
And I'm Scott Sebring.
And this has been My Comic Crush. My Comic Crush is a production of Sebring Arts. Executive producers Vicky Sebring and Scott Sebring. Sound production and theme music by Scott Sebring. Special guest provided by Blackmail and Shameless Baking. For more episodes in this series, you can visit our website at mycomiccrush.com or find us on iTunes, Podcast Republic, or wherever fine podcasts can be found. That's all for now, so go out and read something. Break the seal.